Hello, Uta Hagen here, and my guest,
Hi.
who's visiting me, is Exulansic. We've been spending the weekend together talking about everything turfy and enjoying each other so much. It's just such an honor for me. And I asked Exulansic if we could do a short interview on the topic of the fallacies of crossdressing. So I wanted to ask you about this period in your early adulthood when you were dressing in a sort of decidedly not feminine way. Is that a good description of it? Because I don't know if you consider it cross-dressing.
I just felt like I was dressing as I felt comfortable. So I was wearing differently cut clothes. Had to style my hair differently.
Okay. And your hair was short?
Yeah, I was buzzed for a while.
Oh, buzzed.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was both buzzed, and then for a while I had buzzed with bangs. I'm not sure why I thought that it was kind of like a forehead mustache.
Okay. like even there's even pieces of this that I would just ask, do you think that there was something about the thrill and the sort of radical moment when you got your hair buzzed off?
I do think that buzzing your hair is a good bucket list item for a woman to go through. It was very freeing in a way to feel like I didn't need to care about it and think about it.
Right. And actually, in terms of what I want to cover here regarding what I call the fallacies of cross-dressing, is this idea that there's this big liberation because it's a break from the past. And I think in what we hear from detransitioners, both male and female, is that they come to a point where it's very constraining and it's exhausting to do this cross-dressing and be focusing constantly on this presentation of being in the opposite sex.
It definitely got to a point where I stopped caring so much, and it seemed like more of a distraction than something that I needed to be doing. You know, it's a crutch.
It's a crutch.
It's a crutch that people pick up when they're
Right.
struggling in their life for some reason.
Yeah, and
a lot
so
of the time anyway.
Right, and so you talk about transitioning in all of its ways as placebo effect.
Yeah,
and I was
definitely.
just wondering, if you could expound on that a little bit, because sometimes when I think that when the general public or someone who is many years away from taking Psych 101 or something, they have forgotten what is a placebo. How is it that taking things to change your body could be a placebo?
Anything that you are doing with the intention that it's going to treat you or help you in some way is a placebo.
Yeah.
And then the opposite is nocebo, which is something you expect to harm you, that harms you because you expect it to harm you, but not for any other reason.
I see. And what I feel is that people are operating on a lack of information, and that if you do anything from social transitioning through up to very radical treatments like surgeries, that it is damaging, and you haven't been informed of the actual risks. And the other piece of it that I do wonder about too is rebellion. Sort of like it kind of goes along with the idea that you are liberating yourself from something, and there's some rebellion. Do you have any thoughts about that as far as what you've observed with others or anything with your own experience?
I do think that especially when you're young, there's a lot of angst surrounding being the adult form that you've been expecting to become, and what other people expect of you. And so there is an element where you're taking your power back in a way, and taking control by saying, I'm going to flout what I imagine are your expectations of me, which I think a lot of people confuse with somehow actually knowing what other people's expectations are of you. And then you get back into the autism thing, where the question is, were your expectations of other people's expectations actually the same thing as other people's expectations, or were you just wrong because you were young? Was your model simple?
Right.
Because you were young.
Right. And I think this very oversimplified model is being pushed within, the schools, on children. This gross oversimplification of what our identity is. And then I also was thinking about the concept of novelty. So I would imagine that there's a novelty, for a male to be putting on a dress, and there's a novelty for a female to put on clothes that she has decided are going to make her appear male. Mm-hmm. I wore jeans and flannel shirts, and I thought I was kind of cute and sexy in a female way wearing these things, and so I didn't. This is something that I don't understand. I think that for men who cross-dress and put on frilly dresses and stuff, that it's pretty blatant. But then, women wear pants, women wear plaid shirts, women wear button-down shirts, men's wear style clothes that are designed for women. Mm-hmm. And so...
there's an art to it, where you're trying to not just wear the opposite sex's clothes, but the idea is that you're making changes and you're choosing things in order to mimic the proportions and be aware of what are the actual physical proportion differences between males and females, and how can we mess around with that. So like a lot of the men that I would be friends with and trying to, who wanted to look more feminine in their presentation in some way, they would, for instance, they would avoid strappy dresses because they thought that and then people would be able to see that their shoulders are bigger. But actually, generally, if you have larger shoulders, the strappy dresses downplay it. It doesn't emphasize it. So that's just one trick.
There are people making money on this. I'm sure.
Oh yeah, no. If I were a bit more craven, I could probably make a living doing this, because I'm quite good at styling people.
Yeah,
to look like what they're not.
And then, of course, the novelty and the shock factor and the feeling of being liberated and rebelling can sort of, I imagine, be channeled into sexual type of feelings. You know what I mean? Like that... there might be a certain dopamine fix from that, because there's a little bit of a sexual tingle.
Some of the men I was interacting with, definitely more than just a tingle. It's quite obvious.
Yeah.
What they were getting out of it.
So I think about this every once in a while. I never thought about it actually until this year, 30 years after discovering my then husband Nettie's cross-dressing diaries. I realized that the very first times that he must have gone into the two groomers, one a PhD psychologist and one completely non-certified individual, he must have been cross-dressing. I would assume that there's a motivation to do that, so that you can get that dopamine fix from this so-called professional who's going to say, oh, you look so good in this. You're really doing well at this, and so I'm going to affirm you. Do you know anything about, from the people you've known, have they talked about the first time they went to an affirming therapist or that type of thing? Did they, dress the part?
I assume the one person I knew that definitely went to such a therapist that she was likely binding, because I think she was already binding by that point, and presenting in the way she wanted to present. And then there was what else? I know that some people it's less about getting attention and more about feeling like they're in costume when they go outside and feeling like they're safer for that reason. So I don't know that it's always sexually motivated. Sometimes I do think it's about the theatricalness of it and feeling like they've gone through some sort of ritual to be ready to go outside and in a way that they won't be recognized by, for instance, somebody that had mistreated them in the past. I think there's different reasons that people...
I mean, I don't go outside in schlumpy clothes or pajamas or something like that. I know that that's not so uncommon these days, but I don't. I don't feel ready to face the world if I'm not, dressed in clothes. Yeah. So I don't know. I really am against social transition, and especially with children. I just don't see it as having the correct perspective regarding inanimate objects, which are clothing, for children. Was there anything else that any other parts of this? I'm just going to keep it short.
I just feel like when you go out of your way to give the reinforcement on a fear that if you don't, they're going to hurt themselves, that's a very different thing than just recognizing that, you decided to wear something a little bit fancier, a little bit more feminine, a little bit more masculine than I'm used to seeing you in, but you look nice still. Like, I feel like people, especially young people, need to have freedom to dress differently, and then to find out that actually no one cares that much.
Yes.
And so I think the problem now is that everyone cares a whole lot.
Yes.
When somebody changes their dressing, and then that becomes a means of getting attention, a means of getting reinforcement, a means of getting your way. Whereas the correct response would be tolerance without treating it as being fundamentally different from wearing more sex-normative clothing.
Okay.
Just not caring so much. Let them wear the damn dress. I've said a few times. But
yeah, let them wear the damn
huge,
dress.
huge deal out of it.
Yes.
And don't act like it means something.
Right.
That they're not what they are.
Right. Because you are what you are. Thank you, everyone.